Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my full review of this knife, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives Scuffle. And so this is the newest model in the JW Kollab series, which is collaborations between Jack Wolf Knives and other designers other than Ben Belkin of Jack Wolf Knives. And so if you're not familiar with the different series of knives that Jack Wolf Knives has, I definitely recommend you go check out the article that I wrote on the different series of knives they do. You can find that in the description. But this knife was designed by Nick Rogers, also known as Niche Designs. And so, someone who is known in the industry for having really interesting designs, and actually the first knife from Niche Designs that I have gotten to check out in person. So, I was really interested in that. Now, I didn't get a chance to do an unboxing of this knife like I normally do with the Jack Wolf knives because I got it just a few days after my son was born. So I was a little bit busy, but I wanted to show the packaging because that's one of the things that Jack Wolf Knives and Ben does so well. So this is the normal box that the knives come in. You can see this is the crystallized blurple titanium version, and it's a nice embossed box. If you haven't read this write-up, I highly recommend you pause the video and read it. But then in the box, you have a really nice metal tube, so kind of reminiscent of Great Eastern Cutlery if you come from traditional knives, but metal. It's actually kind of a fun fact that I've said in a lot of videos about Jack Wolf knives. It's the same people that make the tubes for Renaissance wax, but it shows the crystal blurple September 2025. And as you can see, JW Kollab. So collaboration for the culture. And so you've got the really cool art from the Sean Tiffany, the same artist that does all of the models for the first release, which is Sean Tiffany. Really cool comic book style art. So I really like that. I think he's a possum there, Nick Rogers. And then there's Jack Wolf himself. But again, Niche Designs, and in the tube you have a pog. So just a cool kind of callback to 90s and 80s culture. I remember my brother having these, or brothers. I actually don't know which one had them, but somebody had them. They're sitting around my house. But there's that. It comes with a microfiber cloth, and so these are obviously good for cleaning off your knife. This is actually probably somewhat dirty. I've been using it a lot, but they also make really nice handkerchiefs. I found that once you wash them, they get really, really soft. So if you have extras, I highly recommend wash it, use it as a handkerchief. It's a nice handkerchief. But then it also has two stickers in here. So I actually didn't take one of these out yet. Again, just had stuff going on. But I like that they put the two because you get to keep one and then you get to put one up. So I always put one of these up on my gun safe. And so this one will definitely be fitting. As you can see, quick draw for the Scuffle. And they're both ready to fire there. So really cool drawings, just cool art in general. And like I say, great packaging. I think it goes well with the level of knife that Jack Wolf knives are, which is very, very high. If you are not familiar with Jack Wolf knives, uh, I don't know, they've really made a mark on the scene, I think, on the knife market and scene. So I think that a lot of people are aware of them now, who are at least, enthusiasts, who are maybe on Facebook groups and things like that. And speaking of which, I highly recommend you join the Jack Wolf Knives Worldwide Facebook group because it is a great place if you like to see and talk about Jack Wolf knives, and also purchase old models that are no longer at dealers, secondhand basically. But they're very, very nicely made knives. I've done a lot of videos on them. I've been very fortunate that I've known Ben for a long time now, and he's sent a lot of knives for me to check out, and I really appreciate it. And I've bought a good number also. And I think that it's really hard to understate, to overstate, sorry. It's hard to overstate the quality and just how nice they are. If you haven't seen one, I just saw a post on Reddit about someone, that was a big traditional knife collector that got into Jack Wolf knives and just was kind of really blown away and won over to the modern slip joints because of how nice they are. But this one is not a slip joint. So this is another modern knife from Jack Wolf Knives, and I would say one of the most modern knives from Jack Wolf Knives. So it has one hand opening. It actually is the first back flipper from Jack Wolf Knives, and it is a locking knife. You can see that it has an inset frame lock, or a bolster lock as it's sometimes called. Also is the first pivot collar. So just some kind of thoroughly modern features to this knife. Now that said, I do think it kind of keeps the idea of modern interpretation of timeless design, because there are some features on this that are reminiscent of traditional knives. And so firstly, the bolster. So it's different than maybe a normal modern knife like this. And I'm going to compare these in a little bit here, or a Sabenza that's just full titanium. But the bolster is something that does make you think of at least a traditional fixed blade, right? Maybe it's a little different than you might see on a traditional slip joint or folding knife, but it does have a bolster. And then another thing is the blade shape. So this is a really kind of classic Bowie style clip point that I think just kind of looks more modern because of how this fuller or long pull, which is another thing I'm going to talk about, and swedging are done. It just the two-tone nature, actually kind of three-tone. You've got the satin here, then a different direction of satin on the flat, and then what's kind of like a bead blast is some sort of media blast on this fuller. That makes it look a little bit more modern, but really I think in its profile, this clip point is a very traditional Bowie shape, even somewhat more so than what you might think of as a Bowie, because what the knife that was actually, used at the original Bowie, and I'm sure some people will say Bowie, whatever, uh, was probably a simpler, less kind of extreme clip point than you might imagine. And it was probably even maybe just a drop point. So I do think that this is a nice classic looking Bowie style clip point. And then, like I say, this has this, which is it's really big for a long pull. So to compare to the long pull on the Jack Wolf Knives Bionic, you can see that if I put it in the camera, you can see that on the Scuffle, it's much wider, but it does still look like a long pull or a fuller or a blood groove, whatever you want to call it. And that is a traditional feature. So I think that the blade is also very traditional inspired. And then even the handle really is kind of traditional looking, maybe somewhat like a teardrop handle, or even towards like the classic, really simple Kepart style handle or something along those lines. So it's not necessarily directly inspired, I think, by any particular pattern, but it's not a super modern looking handle like this, or even really as modern, in my opinion, as this, which is another one of the JW collabs. I think this looks more like a typical modern knife handle than this does. So it does have, I think, inspiration from traditional knives. But then it's just super well made. I mean, it is very, very smooth. It, doesn't necessarily drop all the way closed, but if you give it a little shake, it will drop. It's super smooth on opening. Just really nice and smooth. One other thing I forgot, another first for Jack Wolf knives, is it does have um, like holes drilled, milling, to lighten it on the inside. I don't really know how well you'll be able to see that with my lighting, but there are holes drilled in there to lighten it, which is a good thing, because I will say that this is a hefty feeling knife. It's interesting. It feels to me a little bit heftier, thicker, kind of girthier than something like a Sabenza, or even really this Hinder XM18. Now this is a skinny version. I don't have a normal or thick version. But the Scuffle feels a little bit kind of just thicker, heavier even. And partly that's because this is the one of the full titanium versions. Now there's actually a version that is just full titanium. It doesn't have the titanium scales, covers, whatever you want to call it. But then there's also a version with a black synthetic and then a micarta. So this full titanium is going to be heavier than those, even though titanium is lighter than steel. It is still a heavy feeling knife and a hefty knife. So I don't know how much weight the holes will take away, but probably a good thing overall. But just super well made. Again, this has a pivot collar, which gives it a really nice look, in my opinion. It kind of almost looks like a bird's eye pivot, or like some traditional fixed blade pins, where there's kind of like a brass collar and then or maybe steel and then brass, but you get what I'm saying. So I do like that, and it's fit really nicely. The other thing is that these scales, these covers, whatever you want to call it, the crystallized titanium, is just fit so well to the bolster, to the integral bolster. There's genuinely, I haven't been able to see any gapping. It's as if it was one piece of titanium. So that's really, really nice. And it's not something that you necessarily see on some other knives where the fit is not quite like that. So just really nicely made. It came perfectly centered and has remained that way. It came with no blade play side to side even when unlocked, and has remained that way. It locks up really nicely, no blade play forward and back. Oh, and I think another first too was the internal stop pin. I think that's a first also. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but a first for Jack Wolf knives. So just super, super well made, very smooth. Now, one thing I will admit that I took my Dremel, put tape around the flipper here, and tried to make it a little bit less aggressive on the jimping. And I will tell you that it was not the correct choice. When I first got this, I felt like this jimping was a little bit overly aggressive, but I think that it was better the way that it was. The intention was to try to make this jimping match more closely to this jimping and the aggressiveness. But this is actually pretty light jimping. It's just kind of gives you a feel for where your thumb is, and so I think that that's something where you would be better off not doing that. It still has no problem flipping at all. You can do either a light switch style, or you can also do more of a push button style, and it's going to flip out. But I don't think that it's better off with the slightly lighter jimping that I gave it. I really need to learn to stop modifying knives. It rarely goes well. But it's just a super nice knife. I have carried and used this pretty much every day since I got it. I have used it a good bit. I've been home, with my wife and sons, and doing a lot of kind of work around the house and things like that to make sure everything's and all squared away. And so I have been cooking a lot also and using this for food prep, and just cuts great. I mean, like all Jack Wolf knives, it's ground really nicely. It has held an edge well. It does need sharpened a little bit here because of hitting plates, basically hitting ceramic plates. But just I've really enjoyed this knife. I think it feels super nice in the hand with that girthier handle, and just is a knife that both looks really good and is really good for use. And another thing I want to talk about, so this knife is about $350, and that's an expensive knife. I mean, for me, I'm not buying a whole lot of $350 knives. I buy Jack Wolf knives sometimes. I've bought a couple higher end, not that high end, I guess, for some people, but higher end for me, American made knives and things like that. But I don't spend over, let's say, $200 that often on knives. But I really think that these are more than a good value at the price that they're at, if it's the type of knife that you're looking for. Because the truth is, if you take this, and it's a $450 knife basically, so about $100 more, it's just not made as nicely. Now, I'm not saying that I dislike this hinderer. I'm not saying that there's not value there also. Obviously, this knife is made in America. This knife is made in China. So it might be worth $100 to you that this knife is made in America. I get that, and obviously I bought it, so I can appreciate that. But from a purely like the niceness of the knife that you're getting, it's favorable for the Jack Wolf knives for sure. And the truth is, I think that that's probably true here also. Now, again, I really like my Spenza. I carry it all the time. It's a great knife. I think that it's a good value, even. And I wouldn't have said that a couple years ago, but I do. I really like it, and it's a great knife. But this knife came with fewer issues, less break-in. I didn't have to knock corners or burrs off of the swedging on this knife, whereas I did on this. People are probably going to be irritated about me comparing this knife to these, classic American-made knives, but it's just something. While I was carrying this, I kept thinking that. I mean, I carry my Sabenza a lot. Before getting this, I was carrying the Hinderer a lot because I got it back from Hinderer warranty. But when I was carrying this, I just kept thinking, man, like I just want to keep carrying this. It's just such a nicely made knife. It's such a well designed knife. I just think, you know, it's a super nice knife. And so, you know, it is what it is. There is downsides to things being made overseas, but on the other hand, I know for sure that Ben of Jack Wolf Knives stands behind his knives. So if you do have an issue, he's going to find a way to make it right. I mean, not that the other two companies that I talked about just now won't. They have for both of them for me, but just because these are made in China doesn't mean the warranty is honored in China. Not that it necessarily wouldn't be there either, but I know that Ben backs the knives in a similar way to American manufactured knives. Kind of gotten off into the weeds on this knife in this video here, but it's a really nice knife. One other thing I want to mention is how nicely done this is. So you can see this is actually the lock bar insert. It's a really big lock bar insert, and it's milled to match with the cutout here so you can get your thumb in. So, and one other thing I wanted to mention, man, this video's kind of got, I didn't follow my plan as much as I probably should have, but this, I don't know that this is intended to be an opening method, the fuller, but for me, I can open it with that relatively easily. And I actually did just like in use open it that way sometimes. I haven't been able to do the middle finger flick with it. Well, there I did, but it's not reliable, whereas this is reliable. So you can certainly open it that way, at least I can. And you can pinch it, but the main opening method is the flipper, and it flips super nicely. So a great knife in the Scuffle from Jack Wolf Knives, designed by Niche Designs, Nick Rogers. If you decide to pick one of these up, this video is coming out later than my videos normally do on the knives. It's going to be about a week after it dropped, so they might be kind of scarce. But if you do decide to pick one up, I always recommend traditionalpocketknives.com. See Reisner Cutlery. Austin does a great job, or Knife Ship Free. Jay does a great job also. But anywhere you get it, I'm sure you'll have a good experience, and let them know that Knife Thoughts sent you. So if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell so that you get notifications when I post, and check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.